Now the cradle, I will briefly show you. 360 degrees of adjustment, right? So the first one that I kind of want to talk about is rotation and what that does for our violin playing. So rotation on this thing means that you can rotate this here, okay, 360 degrees. Now what that means, what that does on the violin is it swings the scroll. If I hold that here, that allows you to swing the scroll and find where you want. And that's one of the ways we can get rid of this, okay? If we're looking down the strings, we can go here and swing the scroll. Now, if we go too far, that's not the only thing that we have at our disposal, and it's not the only thing we really should use, in my opinion. Because if we go here, then we've moved our bow arm here, and yes, we flattened the wrist, but now we're in two boxes. Here's our bow arm, and here's our left arm, right? What if we're here? So it's one box, it's equal, it's balanced on the body, it's more in front of us, right? So that brings me to the next one. There's a little elbow in the post, which means that when you rotate the post, it moves the chin rest laterally. And in fact, you can move the chin rest so that it is outboard at the bottom of the edge of the instrument. Now, what that means is a couple things. For one thing, it means that when I've given this to friends, and we're so accustomed to adjusting ourselves to the setup that I put it in their hands, they put it up and they go, oh, this is comfortable, yeah. And then I'm like, well, it's not really, we haven't really gotten there yet. So with this lateral adjustment, what you'll find is a lot of people reach for the chin rest. And we oftentimes do this without even thinking about it, because it's just what we've had to do for our whole lives. Now, because the chin rest can move towards you, you don't have to, you just turn and put it down, and you put it in a position that it will come to you. So you've decided where you want your head on your neck, and then it comes to you, okay? Now that's lateral rotation. The other thing that perhaps one of the reasons a lot of people don't think about this as a fix for this is to be able to fit our arm in the space. That's simply because we haven't had a chin rest that has done this. But the lateral rotation can help you so that if I'm here, I should use the bow so you can see. If I'm here, I can go like that, or I can go like this. So you kind of move the violin, you can keep your hand here and then move the violin here as well. Okay, and that keeps us from going too far this way, which also, by the way, makes our body go that way. So we now have a twist in the spine in addition to being off balance. But we can keep ourselves in front. Okay? And we flatten the wrist as well. So those two in conjunction can do a lot for people that have longer arms that are struggling to find things that fit. Now, height. This was probably the main reason I sort of got into this designing a chin rest thing, because I kind of realized that using a shoulder rest to lift the violin up to the chin was not doing it for me. It was bad. Basically, there's all sorts of things. So if we lift the violin up to the chin with the shoulder rest, we have to lift everything else up. Now we're up here. A lot of times that results I found myself having the tendency of this again when I lift it up here. Okay, so it also, with the shoulder rest, it kind of becomes a fulcrum on a seesaw. The violin's kind of a seesaw now. Because if the shoulder rest is here, then you kind of have this kind of a thing, especially if there's not like really secure contact with the collarbone. What that means is a seesaw is inherently unstable, obviously. So we just want to squeeze. And the first thing we squeeze is up like this, because it's far less, it's easier to squeeze up here than it is to go down here. Okay, so I found myself squeezing. No matter how tall I made the shoulder rest, I found myself squeezing. I couldn't get away from it. So, and there's other things, people have written about how the muscles up here, if they're touched, they squeeze. You've moved the primary place underneath the instrument that is controlling where it is on the body. You've moved it out to the most mobile joint in the body. So you're kind of locking that in there. So where we want to move, I firmly believe that the collarbone needs to be the primary point that we contact on the other side of the instrument, because it's far less mobile. It's more in the center of the body. It's like a shelf, right? And so that means that if we have that as a constant, then the only way to adjust for all the different kinds of necks out there is on the chin rest side, which means that I believe that the height needs to come from the top down and not the bottom up. Okay, so, and it's amazing when you feel this. When you feel the violin down at the lowest part of the body and you can comfortably play and keep your neck straight, it's actually quite liberating. So that was sort of one of the things. Now the Kréddle comes with 3 different post sizes. This is the tallest post, then there's a middle and a shorter one. So you can kind of, and then I'm going to make taller ones even too, because there's been several people who have asked me for taller ones, and I agree. I want to do that for people. So height. Okay, now tilt would just mean this, right? So tilt sort of dictates where our bow is in space, depending on which string we're on. So if I stay on the G string, I tilt it here, and then I tilt it here. Okay, now the consideration here is pretty much just that we want gravity on our side. If we try and do a spagato with the bow perfectly straight, it's completely up to our hand to make that happen. We don't have gravity in our favor anymore. So we want to find a balance between, we don't want to be looking at the audience here, and we don't want to have the bow on the highest string straight up and down. So it's you could find that position pretty easily. And then pitch would be when an airplane swings its nose up and down with the wings as the fulcrum. The chinrest tilting that way just allows you to customize what the grab on the back of the chinrest is. So it won't dig in or it won't slip away, that kind of thing. So those are sort of like what I see each type of adjustment doing in violin playing. So with that, that's pretty much my presentation, but I would invite, if is there a volunteer that wants to come up and try it out? Okay. Yeah, sure, it's fine. It's already on the instrument. So, is there any questions?
I have one.
Yes.
Do you lock the chinrest once you've found that comfort level?
Yes.
Or is it something that is free flowing so that it's moving with you?
I lock it, and I'm probably 98% of people do. I have gotten some messages from people that have decided to try it moving around a little bit. They've asked if that's okay. I think it's generally okay. It will put a little bit more torque on the parts, so I don't necessarily recommend that out of the box. But if it's just a little bit of motion, I don't see what's so wrong with that. But I lock it in, and I designed it so that it could be locked in completely.
So unfortunately, we have
Yeah,
a faculty meeting
sure.
supposed to go to, but I think everything you said is just so great, and my students, I think, will relate to almost everything that he said. The one thing is the shoulder pad thing, and I totally agree with you. The shoulder pad should not lift the violin off the collarbone. But it seems to me that the role of shoulder pad is to, and what I notice is that people who don't use a shoulder pad and people who do basically play differently. And the people who don't use shoulder pads are holding the violin much more on the hand.
Absolutely.
And so shifting up the instrument involves an entirely different technique than not using a shoulder pad. Would you agree?
I would totally agree with that.
Yeah, okay.
And I think that the decision, people have asked me, do you recommend using a shoulder rest or not? And I just say, it's a matter of personal preference. I think it's just important to understand what they're good at doing, what each tool is good at doing, and what it's not good at doing. After thinking through things, I would say that a shoulder rest for me adds friction and some stability for freeing the left hand a little bit.
Freeing the left hand.
But I wouldn't say that I would be happy with a student who can literally not play a note without one. So if it becomes too integral, I think that's a slippery slope there. I mean, I think that you should be able to do something, at least in one position, without the shoulder rest, right? But I do encourage, however, that whenever you're fitting a chin rest, that you do it without a shoulder rest on, just the basic fitting, and then you can put it back on. Because depending on the chin rest, it's going to change the way the shoulder rest should contact the instrument and the height anyways. But I think that should be second to the fitting of the chin rest. So I in all the things I've written on this, I always say start with the shoulder rest off.